Okay, I think we can get started now. I want to introduce myself. My name is Carter Allagood. I run academic sales here at Capsim. I want to welcome everybody today. We're going to talk about our latest product called CapsimInbox. CapsimInbox is a simulation-based behavioral assessment tool. It measures and delivers developmental feedback and key managerial skills such as initiating, problem solving, organizing, leading, and communicating. So we have quite a few people in this call who have no experience with Capsim. So I do want to give just a brief overview of our company. We started developing computer-based simulation software over 30 years ago, and it was used at schools and Fortune 500 companies. And now we partner with nearly 800 schools, more than 2,000 professors, and we deliver simulations and simulated assessments to over 120,000 students per year. About 10 years ago, a little bit more history, we entered the assessment market with a product called Capsim. Capsim measures a student's understanding of business concepts and their ability to apply those concepts, and that's been used quite a bit in accreditation purposes. I know we have several people that have come through our relationships with ACBSP and AACSP on this call. About the same time that we developed Capsim, we also developed a product called Teammate, and Teammate measures and develops a student's skill in working on teams, and that can be used really on any project, including the simulation. Most recently, we released a multi-source feedback instrument called Capsim 360, which we developed to use in corporate programs. But several schools expressed an interest in using that at the beginning and then at the end of a student's MBA program to assess their growth over the course of the program in managerial and leadership skills. And CapsimInbox, which we're going to talk about today, was built to measure the same skill sets by simulating a business environment for an individual student. So, I do want to mention, because, like I said, a lot of people came in through our relationships with the accrediting bodies, that all these assessments have been used in the for accreditation purposes, measuring these soft skills. They were all built through our partnerships with several organizational behavior experts, including Dr. Dierdorff, who's going to be talking to us today. And CapsimInbox, the subject of today's webinar, was developed by the same team. I do want to mention now, we are currently running a beta of CapsimInbox. This beta will be open until July 31st. So if you or anyone you know have a summer course and you want to try this product out for free in that course to give us some feedback on it and so we can gather data, please indicate that either in the chat window, or you can give us a call or send us an email at welcome@capsim.com, and we'd be happy to set that up for you. So now I'm pleased to introduce to you Dr. Erich Dierdorff. He's a professor of management at DePaul University, and he's an expert in management and assessment. In addition to being an award-winning teacher and publishing over 30 articles in leading management journals, he has also consulted to a variety of organizations, including GE, Nortel Networks, the National Football League, and the United States Special Operating Forces. Erich, welcome.
Thank you, Carter. Appreciate that. I'm always a bit humbled by that bio. I'm really excited to be here to showcase this new behavioral simulation that Capsim just developed. Just a little bit of an overview here and some logistics. If you have any questions along the way, feel free to type them in the chat box. We'll have time at the end to kind of circle back and address some of those questions. We'll start the webinar today by talking a bit about the current state of skill development. Then we'll briefly discuss some compelling reasons to increase our focus on a particular set of skills in our students. Then after this, we'll have a chance to walk through CapsimInbox in order to give everyone a feel for the experience and the essential feedback it's able to provide. And then we'll end the webinar with some illustrative examples of how CapsimInbox could be implemented in a business school context. I know Carter also wanted to do a quick poll at the end just to capture some additional feedback around potential future versions of Inbox around the type of content or subject matter you might be interested in. So if we step back and kind of ponder the types of skills we seek to inculcate in our students, the ones we seek to target in business schools, we spend the majority of our time and efforts on technical and functional skills. And there's been a wide variety of research that is focused on how well we do this. And the good news is we're quite adept in business schools at driving up technical and functional skills in our students and graduates. Yet career success requires more than just technical and functional skills. It also requires skill sets that are conceptual and interpersonal in nature. And here research shows that we often struggle in business school environments to drive up these types of skills. While we're good and quite effective at technical and functional, we find it more difficult to drive up the conceptual and interpersonal skills. This is an important point to talk about because the value of these so-called soft skills, if you will, is quite clear. For example, if you look over the last 10 to 15 years of these large-scale surveys of hiring organizations and corporate recruiters, skills like leadership, communication, problem-solving, teamwork, initiative are always top 5 attributes. They're the things that organizations that hire our graduates find highly desirable. It's interesting here, just to show you an example of some of these data. Here are just some sources of these findings from just the last year and a half. So you can see the very expansive research here, and the message is quite clear. On the flip side of these being highly desirable, the lack of such capabilities is a primary derailer of career progress as well. Just for example, a 20-year study of Fortune 500 companies was interested in trying to uncover what are some of the key obstacles or derailers of people's career progression. And you can see them up here: problems with interpersonal relationships, failure to meet business objectives, inability to build and lead a team, inability to develop or adapt, as well as being too functionally or too technically oriented. And so the key points here are these types of skills both impact employability of our graduates as well as their future promotability. You know, and indeed, business schools really do recognize the value of these skills. If you think about it from an accreditation standpoint, these types of competencies are regularly appear in the learning goals that we often write for accreditation purposes. You know, learning goals that mention things like demonstrating leadership, effective communication, working effectively with others, managing, leading teams, evaluating problems, solving management problems. These types of learning goals are quite common in a business school environment. So clearly, hiring organizations want this. It impacts long-term career success. Business schools recognize the importance of this so much so that it's included in mission statements and learning goals. A good question might be, well, how well are we actually doing? And I'll go back to one of the same surveys that outlines the demand of these skills, the Bloomberg Job Skills Report. And here what they've identified through corporate recruiters and hiring organizations is ask the question, what are the most highly desired skills, but often those that are the least commonly found in our graduates, what they call the sweet spot. And here 3 specific skills pop out: leading, problem solving, and communicating. So these are the ones that are most desired but least often found. At the graduate level, there's recent surveys as well by the Graduate Management Admissions Council surveying MBA alumni, and they find that after finishing the MBA and getting out there and assuming managerial roles, almost 85% indicated a need for more management education. And when they dived deeper into this need and said, well, what kinds of skills are most needed that you would like to see more education, one of the primary areas was managing human capital, which is comprised of more specific skills such as leading, organizing, and communicating. So as you can see here, there's clearly a demand for these skills. As business schools, we recognize this, but there seems to be something going on where we might be falling short here. And as some of you might be saying, really, this is still a problem in 2017? And look, there's a lot of different drivers of the sort of current state of affairs, one of which is the amount of time we have with our students. Other examples are the types of instructional tools we might use to inculcate these types of so-called soft skills. So regardless of whatever approach we take, for any tool to truly promote skill development, it really has to meet 4 key criteria. That tool, that instructional approach, needs to assess both knowing and doing. It needs to foster accurate self-awareness. It needs to deliver an engaging and relevant experience to students. And it needs to provide actionable feedback. So when we talk about knowing and doing, we're really talking about the idea of assessing knowledge as well as skills or the application of that knowledge. Accurate self-awareness needs to be based on objective information, not just self-reported information. When we talk about engagement and relevant experience, we're really dealing with the idea of fidelity or realness of the experience itself. Are we delivering an experiential, engaging approach where there's an interaction that's involved between students and the thing that they're doing? And finally, is that experience career-related? Is it actually tapping into and driving up change in the things that matter most for our students' career success? And last but certainly not least is when we're talking about actionable feedback, it has to be specific, developmental in nature, not just simply a grade that someone receives on an exam or a self-reflection essay. And even more importantly, are we providing that specific developmental feedback that in addition gives guidance on how to apply that feedback? The good news is that CapsimInbox checks off all 4 of these criteria. Now that we've kind of built this case for the importance of developing these so-called soft skills, I just want to take a look at this tool that can improve the way we build these skills in our students. A few quick notes here. We're going to be looking at the beta version of CapsimInbox, and I'll be presenting some screenshots of the exercise, again with the main goal to give you a feel for what it's like from a student perspective to participate in this behavior-based simulation. So as they proceed through this exercise, it's specifically designed to be entirely self-directed. It takes about 60 minutes to complete, during which participants must address a variety of situations, problems, information, messages, all of which are designed to elicit 5 important skills: organizing, leading, problem-solving, communicating, and initiating. So what we're looking at right here is the splash page, if we will, where the students view an introductory video. Provides them a preview and a feel for what the experience is like. It gets them up the learning curve. What's important here is that, again, we're assessing, it's a skill-based assessment, which meets that first criterion we just discussed around assessing both knowing and doing. So this introductory video kind of gets them up the learning curve of what to expect. And after this introduction to the exercise, participants are then asked to complete a brief self-assessment of these 5 key skills. The reason why this is done is because self-assessment is absolutely crucial for the developmental experiences to be effective. People have to sort of understand where they're at now before they get the feedback to then improve. Again, this meets that second criterion we discussed earlier about fostering accurate self-awareness. And we'll circle back to this when we get to the feedback, the report. You'll see how the self-assessment is integrated into that developmental feedback. So after the self-assessment, the students then move into a short narrative that really reinforces the introductory video, as well as describes the participant's role and their company. So basically, the student is put in a position where their role is a director of sales and operations. They work for a company called Ubiquitools, and this company sells technology applications around the Internet of Things. So those of you who aren't familiar with the Internet of Things, maybe you just haven't heard that label. You will know the technology. Think of things like Google Home, Amazon's Alexa, smart thermostat, smart locks, these sorts of things. So that's what this company does. It sells these kinds of applications. Students are also given, in addition to this broader backdrop, we're also given more specific information about their current situation. So you've just returned from an extended holiday weekend. It's the busiest time of the year. You're excited to get back to work. You grab your coffee, log in, and open your email and find out the messages have already begun to pile up. The idea here is you're, again, setting the stage for what the students are going to experience. This is critically important because, again, remember one of our criteria, the third criterion, is creating an engaging, relevant experience that provides fidelity. So this design feature of fidelity is pulled throughout the interface as well. And so now the students enter into the CapsimInbox interface that you can see right here. And CapsimInbox looks and operates like a typical communication platform. So you have emails, right, with a reading pane. You also have instant messages that pipe in, as well as a cloud drive, a file drive here. So this is designed, again, to look and feel and operate like a typical communication platform. There's also a timer at the top with the ability to toggle off. So if students find that distracting, you can toggle that to where you don't have to look at the timer counting. So again, as students work through these various emails, messages, file drives, they're presented with a variety of information and requests that span a real variety of issues that are important to address, such as dealing with employee or customer relations, as well as addressing strategic or operational problems, all of which are designed to elicit those 5 key skills we discussed earlier. So let's take a look at one of these emails, for example. So here's one that comes from your boss in this simulated experience, Jen Grawl. She's the SVP of Sales and Marketing. And so here's an example of an email request around the idea of what's your strategy for your region for driving up sales. Now, an important design feature of CapsimInbox is that students aren't required to physically type in, to manually type in responses. Instead, if we scroll down this email from Jen Grawl, we see response options. And so the idea here is different response options are provided from which participants have to choose. Now, this approach has a major advantage of not requiring trained raters to score responses and score the exercise. This has the advantage of making the assessment a lot more efficient as well as cost effective. So while students are kind of interacting and going through these different various emails, you'll also notice some other things. I wanted to call up another email here for you. You'll notice that their names are piped in, right? And again, it's trying to speak to the fidelity of the exercise to make it more engaging and real. As they're working through all of these various emails and requests, they're also getting in instant messages appear. You can see that at the top right. And so students would click that. Now they have an instant message to address. This one's coming from your administrative assistant, Jordan Dunn, who's telling you, sorry to interrupt. I know you're busy. There's an employee here from production who doesn't appear all that happy. In fact, he's snarling at me as I type. He won't tell me why he wants to meet with you, but is insisting on talking with you. What should I do? And you can see some of the responses at the bottom right that students can choose from. In addition to responding to static emails as well as instant messages that pipe in, many of these emails also require you to utilize other resources, other information that's presented in a different email or presented in documents that are within the Drive box. So this one you're looking at right here from Mike Michaels in HR is a request for you to identify training opportunities for your team. This requires you to go into the relevant file in the Drive box called potential training events, and as students click that, a table pops up that shows them the various training programs that are available during this quarter. The program's titles, descriptions, as well as cost per person and the length and duration of the training program. And there's several different criteria you have to take into consideration before choosing the opportunity or opportunities you want to offer to your team. The point being here is there's a variety of interaction that's involved throughout this assessment, utilizing different kinds of information. Some is text, some is tabular, some is numbers. There's even videos as well that are in the Drive box that students watch and have to react to as well. So as participants continue to move through Inbox until they've addressed all of the requests, again, it's designed to be fully completed and to take typically 60 minutes. Once they finish, they're provided a detailed feedback report, which we'll look at next. And again, if you have any questions along the way, feel free to type them in. So recall our fourth and one of the most important criteria for any tool to have true skill development is the idea of actionable feedback. And so the way this feedback report is designed is to guide people from a more general overall level of feedback down into specific details. And this is intentional because we based this walkthrough of feedback on the broad literature on professional development and career management. So the notion is following evidence-based principles to deliver this feedback. And so what you're looking at here is the top part of the feedback report. And not only does it sort of follow this evidence-based process, it also ensures that the feedback is developmental in nature. And what you're looking at here is kind of the high-level snapshot of how a student performed. So they're getting their overall performance score based off how quickly and accurately they proceeded through the exercise itself. They're also getting information around how consistently they demonstrated the proficiency across 5 key skills. Incidentally, the data are presented graphically, also in text form. And over here, the text is customized, is tailored to how the student, him or herself, assessed. So in other words, not everybody gets the same feedback. It's triggered by the way you assess. The text will change. Again, making it a little bit more real and giving them more information that's specific to the way they perform. The bottom half of this feedback report now integrates what we've talked about before, that self-assessment. Again, the text here is customized and piped in depending on how the person assessed. Giving them information about where they're at in terms of how accurate their self-assessment is with regard to the objective assessment they just participated in. They're also given their skill scores as well. I should mention that all the scores here are percentile based, which is what you want for developmental purposes. What matters most is relative feedback on how students perform. So all this is fantastic. They're getting numbers, they're getting graphs, they're getting customized descriptions. But what we really care about as educators, trainers, and developers is to get people to use this information, right? And so after they move through the report, the next step is to move them into a structured process that helps them build an individual development plan, right? And so we're looking at the beginning of this. Now I know there's a lot of text on the screen, and I wanted to show you this intentionally because what's trying to be done here is to create a purely self-directed process. And so the idea here is you as an instructor, an administrator, a professor, a trainer, you can be involved as much or as little as you see fit, right? This thing can be completely self-guided, or you can be there with the students and offering even more information. And so what we want to do here, again, driving this from the evidence of professional development and career management, is we really wanted to set the stage for people to develop. So the first step is to kind of teach them how to self-manage their own development. That's one of the key problems with a lot of people when they're moving through professional development and managing their career actively, is that they don't have the skills or even the know-how to truly self-manage their own development, which is an absolute must. And so here at the beginning, we kind of preface it, teach them a little bit about the idea of what is skill development, what's involved, and what are some evidence-based steps you can take to do this in general. Then, on the bottom portion of this IDP, this Individual Development Plan Builder, we list off the skills that they were just assessed on, their scores. We quickly identify how high the need is for development, and then allow them to choose a skill to improve upon, and that's what those little blue buttons are. You'll also notice some text there where it says read more. This is where I get really excited because oftentimes when students go through developmental assessments, they ask the question, okay, what am I supposed to do with this now? Or let's say you're a professor that doesn't really teach organizational behavior classes. You teach intro to management classes, and you don't necessarily feel comfortable doing one-on-ones with students, or you simply have too many students to do one-on-ones with. In this IDP builder, we present developmental tactics, right? And so I'd like to show you one here for problem solving so you can get a feel for the evidence-based tactics that are brought to bear for students. Now, I don't expect you to read all of this text, but I did want to show it to you just to kind of exemplify the level of detail that's given to students. Again, the goal is to give very precise evidence-based tactics for skill improvement. You know, recall the exercise is supposed to be self-directed, so you as an instructor can do as much or as little as you would like. Now, all of these developmental tactics for each of the skills follows a similar format, and basically four parts. The first part, the skills described and defined in detail, so the student understands what it really means when you talk about problem solving, for example. The next part provides recommendations for how to learn more about what that skill is, right? So here about problem solving, considering formal coursework in systems thinking, decision making, data analysis, business stats, and so forth. The third part moves from learning about the skill to actually practicing the skill. So we give specific recommendations for how to practice the skill in day-to-day work, beyond work, and these sorts of situations. And last but not least, there's a number of quick tips, evidence-based tips, that are provided to immediately begin skill improvement in our students. Things that they can take and immediately start doing right after they finish the assessment. And so after we provide this kind of feedback, the students, again, choose a skill to develop. This now moves them into the second portion of the IDP builder. It walks them through a structured process to build an individual development plan. Again, you as a professor really don't even have to lift a finger here. This builds the IDP for the students themselves. The first step is for them to reflect on the skill they chose. So here this person chose problem solving. A description is again channeled in. We get them to reflect on the skills by thinking about reasons why it's important for their current or future career, or in different situations where they might use or practice this skill. So students enter in some of this information while they reflect on the skill set. Now the second step is to get them to set a proper goal. So one of the big problems, I've been doing this for well over a decade, doing individual development plans with undergrads and graduates, it's really difficult to get people to write good goals. They tend to write tasks instead of goals. And so we wanted to really just take that off the table, right, to make this really easy for students to do. And so what we do here is we walk them through just a simple set of questions. For example, when do you want to accomplish your skill development? By what percentage improvement would you like to see? How will you evaluate your progress? And based off the way they respond to these different types of questions, it creates a goal statement for them that meets the so-called SMART criteria: specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. So you can see these blanks on screen. These are filled in based off the way they respond to the previous 3 questions. And after they set that goal, now's the time to get into where the rubber meets the road, as they say in the South. We want to create our action plan. So here again, we pipe in the developmental tactic, as you can see right here. This is the idea that students can go back to that tactic and pull out information that helps them think about ways and the steps they need to take to develop this skill. And they can add as many steps as they see fit. Describing actions, the date by which they will take these actions, and also the various resources they might need: people, money, time, and so forth. And so once they've built all of these steps, as many as they see fit, they can then download or print out a fully completed, customized, individual development plan that's tailored to their specific skill need. And so that's a sort of a short overview, a short preview of what the CapsimInbox looks like and the kinds of feedback and experience it provides. I want to just briefly touch on ways you might implement this in a business school context. There's kind of at the broadest level 4 ways this can be used, the first of which is probably the most obvious. It can be course embedded. Some of the courses that seem most relevant for the use of CapsimInbox might be courses that are so-called Management 101 courses, so think your Introduction or Principles of Management courses, organizational behavior, leadership coursework, communications, managerial decision-making seem particularly ripe for using this kind of experience in behavior-based simulation. At a program level, you can see this being used as part of an onboarding process, or structured experience during things like orientation. You might have special boot camps around some of these skills, or if you have retreats for some of your programs. Career services also could make use of this if we think of it as a tool for delivering specific career-related feedback, as a skill assessment, for career counseling purposes, or even to further professional development, right? And last but not least, if we think of other non-degree programs that a lot of us have at our schools, you could use this as curricular content to either integrate into existing courses or actually to build coursework and experiences around this assessment. So think of our executive programs. I know some of you have certificate programs you might offer, a leadership certificate and so forth, or even some of the corporate outreach your school might do with corporate training events and these sorts of things. So we covered a lot of material today. We did a little bit of a showcase, ways this can be implemented, built sort of a rational, data-driven case for why we should do a better job around these skills if we want to really promote the future career success of our students. If we kind of really take a step back and say, what are we trying to do here with this kind of soft skill development, is we're really trying to add value to our students, but also for our school. We want to develop, demonstrate, and differentiate. And so if we think of this idea of development, again, we're really trying to provide experiential learning to develop these key skills, educating tomorrow's leaders today. Look, we presented a lot of evidence that these are the very same skills that our hiring organizations want to see, but are rarely found in a lot of our graduates. They're also the very same set of skills that impact promotability 5-10 years from now. We can also use this, as Carter alluded to earlier, for accreditation purposes. it's not, it probably doesn't come as a surprise that while we regularly have learning goals around these soft skills for accreditation purposes, these are also the same learning goals that give a lot of schools consternation, that schools find difficult to locate information that speaks to these very same skills. This is a great way of providing hard metrics for these soft skills. And last but not least, probably one of the most important aspects for both the students and for you is that there's a chance to differentiate. You know, when I talk about differentiation, we're thinking about the reputation of your alumni as well as your institution. You know, again, the greater degree you can differentiate your students and give them the very same skills that are highly desirable, you're increasing their employability. And we know that a lot of placement of our students in hiring organizations really depends on our reputation for developing people that are career ready, that can hit the ground running, that have shorter learning curves. And as you build your reputation as a place where people can go to find really high quality candidates, that does nothing but bring benefits to your institution as well. So I hope you enjoyed the talk and got a little bit out of this and a good feel for what this might look like and hopefully how it might be used. Carter also wanted to take a moment just to pop up a quick poll. As you can see, the current CapsimInbox is built around assessing these generalizable managerial skills. But when I first saw this, I started thinking, wow, you could build content around very specific curriculum content as well and deliver it through this mechanism. So we were trying to capture some of your thoughts on this. What kind of content might you want to see in future versions of this? So I think we're going to pull up a GoToMeeting poll here. And if you wouldn't mind responding. And if you see something that's not listed up here, you feel free to type it into the chat window as well. So the question basically is, what subject area would you like to see content developed for a future version of CapsimInbox? And you can see some examples here.
You're not going to let me talk, are you?
No, I'm just going to keep talking. On a roll.
All right, thanks, Eric. So yeah, if everybody could go in, and if you think about this, we built this to be as flexible as possible. And so we've got a lot of options of the various directions we can go. And we thought of a few. So, you know, select as many as you like, or just one, Evan, I'm not sure. And, you know, if you think of any others, please feel free to share that with us in the chat window. Also, again, we've got several questions here. We're going to get to them. But if you want to beta test, we are offering the beta for the summer only. And you still have 6 more weeks to do that. Please just type the word beta into the chat window or even the question window if you like, and we will set that up for you. Okay, so you want to do a couple questions?
Sounds great. What do we got here? Let me roll over.
All right, so, well, we've answered a few in line that were pretty specific. When in the semester would you introduce this to the students?
Oh, thank you. So a question was typed in asking about when might be a good time to implement this in the semester. You know, personally, the way I intend to use this is probably around, for example, in my MBA organizational behavior class. I'll probably roll this out about midway, because I want to kind of lay the groundwork, for example, around, you know, organizational behavior topics and the importance of various managerial skills, influence skills, and these sorts of things, and then have them do an assessment about midway through, because then I could debrief it in class. And that's because I want to make it part of my curriculum. But you could use it in a variety of ways. I know some other professors that have looked at this have talked about, you know, putting it right at the beginning of a course, because then it sets the stage for the skill development, and then you can use the course to help teach them to develop these skills. I was talking with another professor that wants to use it as part of the orientation program when students come in, so they can experience and get skill-related feedback that can inform additional curriculum choice, right? So if you have electives in your program, also participation in other kinds of co-curricular options like executive briefings, speaker series, other kinds of career services. Hopefully I answered your question.
Yeah, I think so.
So someone also is asking, can we share the presentation? Absolutely. Right, Carter?
Yeah, we're going to make the recording of the webinar available on our website.
So someone's also asking the idea around what population is used for computing the percentile results. This was good. Yeah, so especially if it's a beta version, That's a great point. So currently right now, they're in the data capture phase, Capsim. The intention is to have separate populations as quickly as statistically possible when the scores start stabilizing for graduate and undergraduate. For the first few months, of course, there's going to be one large database that blends undergrad and graduate because you want more stable numbers. But it looks like it's only going to be a couple months of that because there's such interest in it, and there's a lot of pilot testing. And
I'm part of the reason for the beta too, right?
Exactly. And I'm also helping Capsim kind of make sure we do all of the stuff you're supposed to do when you develop an assessment, which is the validity checks and the reliability and build up a sound database. Thank you for that question. That's a good one.
So we don't currently have anybody using the beta. That starts today. This is kind of kicking off that whole process. Okay, a few people have asked about the fee per student. We have tried to keep this as affordable as possible. We do have site license options available. Now that will be really dependent on your school size and your own situation and how you intend to use it. So we'd be happy to talk to you about that. But on a per student per use price, it's only $24.99. So
a lot of the other questions are around beta.
Beta. Oh, you can test drive it, same as beta. Sure, if somebody wants to test drive it, just sign up for the beta.
Good. So what might be interesting here too, if I just sort of gave a showcase, kind of high-level presentation of this, you can, in addition to using the beta, if you want a more in-depth demo, you just contact Capsim, correct, yeah. Carter? And
welcome at capsim.com.
And don't worry, we won't at this point create a separate database that's just for professor scores.
And also, we'd be happy to do a one-on-one demo if anybody has specific questions about how things work. Happy to show that to you. Okay. Is this intended for a single use for each student?
Yeah, this is a good question. So someone just asked, is this intended to be used once, one and done kind of thing? No, it's actually, because these are skills, they're trainable, they're malleable. You could take it as often as you'd like as a student. I mean, in a perfect scenario, if I was implementing this at a program level, if I was in charge of an MBA program or an associate dean type thing, I'd want to do it early and late in the program, because not only for accreditation purposes you get change-oriented data, but you're also giving developmental feedback to students at the beginning and at the end. Look, they're not going to learn everything at your school. We know that, right? But the idea is you're giving them that information early on. They can see how well they improved and also understand where else they need to work. So it's designed in such that you can be taken multiple times. And that would actually be optimal situation.
All right. Okay, so we'll leave this open for a while. If you guys continue to ask questions, we will definitely get back to you, but in the interest of time, I think we're going to need to shut this down. Eric, thank you so much again.
My pleasure.
It's always a pleasure to have you here and to hear about this stuff, and it's quite exciting. We've gotten some great response to this product so far.
Thank you.
Looking forward to it. Thank you, everybody. Any questions, please feel free to get in touch.